Welcome. I'm Rebecca Bellinger, the Executive Director of the Center for Global Business here at Maryland Smith. And today I'm joined by my friend and colleague, Bobby Patton. Bobby is the founder, president, and CEO of Patton Electronics. He is also the chair of the DC District Export Council, or DEC, and he's a Terp. Bobby, it's such a pleasure to have you with us here today.
It's great to be here, Rebecca.
Tell us about how you founded your company and what your company is doing today.
So the founding of our company is interesting. It's kind of a long story. I'm one of 10 children.
Wow.
So I went to a state school because that's what we could afford. And my father had a couple of heart attacks and a stroke in the early 80s, 1983 timeframe. And I'm still in college and I'm thinking, how am I going to finish paying for my education? A topic that's very relevant for students today. For me, it was just as relevant. And my father was a serial entrepreneur. He had started businesses all through my growing up years, and so I had that example. And I started asking him while he was recovering in the hospital, Dad, how do you start a business? He gave my brother and I each $5,000, said this will be cheaper than an MBA, and told us to go ahead and get rolling. So we did.
And what is it that Patton Electronics does today?
So we manufacture communications equipment. We've been in that business since we started in 1984.
So how did you start selling internationally?
By accident. It was really by accident. It was not that intentional. We were in the telecommunications business. And so we were very early with the World Wide Web, as it was called back then, the internet. And so we started putting some of our product information on the World Wide Web and immediately started to get interest, primarily from other English-speaking countries. So England and Australia and other places like that started to find our products on the World Wide Web, and we started selling them. And that was how we did it. Yeah.
And so where are you selling internationally today? Or tell us a little bit more about your global operations.
So the operations have really expanded tremendously from those times. When we first started getting those orders from Europe, we thought maybe it would be a good idea to go there. So my brother, co-founder, went to Germany to a trade show. And while he was there, he decided to drive around Europe, look in the yellow pages, try to figure out who was in our industry and go knock on doors. And that's literally what he did. And he actually found a few prospective resellers for our products.
Through the yellow pages.
Through the yellow pages on the side of the road. Back in the days when you didn't have mobile phones and there were actually pay phones on the sides of the road.
Wow.
So yeah, he did that through the yellow pages and made a few connections, made some connections in the trade show. And it started to really expand our sales in Europe. We did that for a while and it got to be a measurable part of our business. I would say when it got to be close to 15% or so of our revenue, the bank noticed that we were selling internationally. And they started asking us questions about it. And they said, well, we really can't provide the working capital for these foreign transactions because there's no way we would be able to collect on that if things went south. And so they thought that was a bad idea. And so I went looking for solutions. I found another bank that had a relationship with the Export-Import Bank, the Exim Bank. And we got involved in the Exim Bank Working Capital Guarantee Program, which enabled us then to expand our working capital and borrow money against those foreign transactions and grow our foreign business. So today, we're doing 65 to 70% of our revenue is coming from outside the United States.
Wow.
In the last 5 years, we've sold our products in over 140 countries, which is just about all of them. So we have a few subsidiaries. We do all of our manufacturing in the United States, in Gaithersburg, Maryland. We have a lot of automated electronic assembly equipment. And then we have a subsidiary in Switzerland, where we do some software development, technical support, and of course, all of our Western European sales is operated from there. And then we also have a subsidiary in Budapest, Hungary, and they're doing similar functions. They don't have software engineering capability, but they have all the technical support and sales and developing a system integration capability in Hungary.
But today, what is your strategy for choosing and entering markets abroad? What are the kinds of factors you might consider?
So we're doing most of our market research through the internet. We're putting out all of our products and portfolios and solution sets, and everything is on our website. We pay a lot of attention to our website, and we're trying to track what countries website visitors are coming from. And so that's one key indicator that there's a lot of interest in our products coming from these countries. And we can even tell which pages they're looking at. And so we know that they're interested in a certain category of products because we have a pretty broad portfolio. And so that helps us to define that there's a need because they're finding us and they're looking for solutions like what we have. And then we can study that a little bit further. So
you're interpreting the web hits as almost your customer discovery method.
That's right. It tells us that there's demand in those markets. And so we begin to look at whether or not there's a fit for our products and our portfolio to meet that demand. And there's a lot of factors that go into that. What's the competitive landscape look like? Who would we be going against if we entered that market? What's the volume? How much would we actually get from those markets if we went there? And we use a variety of resources to accomplish that. We've used the Gold Key programs from the U.S. Export Assistance Centers. We've used graduate students from the universities, local universities, to do studies.
Including Maryland?
Including Maryland. We've done some work with the University of Maryland, particularly on the supply chain side.
Oh, great.
But yes, we engage with the various resources that are around us and local to learn more about those markets. So our greatest success internationally is definitely Western Europe. We've been there the longest. When we formed our subsidiary in Switzerland, it was through an acquisition. And so that company already had a brand established in the local market. So they were pretty well known, and they had technology that was very fine-tuned to the requirements in Western Europe. And so we were able to take that technology, integrate it in with our products, and have a really nice fit of capabilities on the product, brand recognition, and that enabled us to penetrate the Western European market.
Are there any other tools or resources you would rely on or recommend others rely on to help really break into foreign markets or be successful abroad? You mentioned EXIM. You mentioned the Gold Key service from the USIAC or the U.S. Export Assistance Center. You mentioned working with students at the University of Maryland and other places. Are there other resources or tools?
So definitely one of the lowest cost things and most effective things you can do is really improve your website. Make it relevant to a global audience. And that's one of the areas that we've put a lot of energy and effort into providing information in a way that would be received in different markets, in different languages, things like that. So investing in those areas tells you where the opportunity is, starts to generate leads that you can follow and then expand upon. I mean, the District Export Council is a gem. There are dozens of seasoned exporters who are involved in the DEC. They're from all different industries. That could be technology industries, product industries, service industries, and they also are made up of service providers that have the tools that are necessary for financing, for logistics, and a whole host of other means to get the job done. So, and it's free.
Is there any overarching piece of advice or note of wisdom that you would give other companies that are either afraid to get into exporting or only really just starting out? What kind of advice would you give?
Fear is good as long as it's getting you to think about the best way to do things and not preventing you from doing them. So I would say, to leverage the fear to your advantage, and don't let fear stop you from being successful.
What do you think about the impact of new technologies, AI specifically? How is that impacting your business now?
So I associate AI with the Internet of Things. The Internet of Things is a market where my products play, and we provide a lot of connectivity for the Internet and for industrial things. The amount of data that is coming from IoT devices and sensors and all sorts of gadgets is overwhelming. And the way that is managed is through big data analytics and artificial intelligence in order to provide decision data from all of that massive data so that good choices can be made. I think it's going to be a tremendous impact on not only the economy, but on the way business is done, the way manufacturing is done, the way transportation is done. It's going to impact everything. So,
and I'm hearing you talk about it as an asset as opposed to something that's going to be detrimental to the workforce or how work is done. Is that an appropriate interpretation?
Yeah,
maybe?
I see it as an asset.
A positive.
It's definitely
Yeah.
a positive.
Yeah. It's interesting. My next question is about digital platforms or the idea of digital trade. It's one of the focus areas for the center this year. It's interesting that you started out even years ago moving directly into online sales. It's, a form of digital trade. Are you seeing an uptake in that now? Everyone's talking about, digital trade and new ways of using digital technologies, blockchain, things like this for financing.
Right.
What do you think is the future?
Well, certainly paper is going to be less and less and less and less, and I'm
Don't
glad
look at
for
mine.
that. So that when we're doing even simple things like billing, almost none of it is done with paper anymore. There's no invoices, there's no checks. Everything is done electronically, and so that kind of digital e-commerce is really effective. It's efficient. It helps things to be better organized. It reduces the footprint of the amount of space that a business needs to operate. A computer takes up a whole lot less space than a file cabinet.
Yeah.
And so, it's just going to have a big impact on things like that, what the work environment looks like and the kinds of work that you're doing.
What has been, or what do you perceive as the impact of tariffs and trade wars and maybe the decline of bilateral trade agreements? How does that impact exporters in the U.S.? How has that impacted you?
Well, it's definitely impacted us. We're certainly feeling the effects of the sanction or the trade war that's going on with China. We source a lot of material components from China, and so that's been problematic on the one hand because we've seen an increase in our costs that probably is for a business that is relatively small, several full-time equivalents. So it's a measurable percentage of our cost basis has been impacted by tariffs. On the other hand, I think that it's kind of needed to do something about the way that the trade has been conducted, particularly from the perspective of the United States. We've been the consumer of the world. There's lots of arguments whether that's good or bad, but it's a fact. And so a lot of the money flow to the rest of the world has been coming from our consumption.
Okay.
And that's been that's a double-edged sword by itself. But the reverse of that is that a lot of that money has been flowing out of our country, and a lot of the resources have been flowing out of our country. And so that's had an economic impact that is problematic. In my industry, in electronics, it's substantial. When we first started out in business, all of my supply chain was in the United States. Today, almost none of my supply chain is in the United States.
What a difference.
It's a tremendous change. And so being able to regain some of that supply chain closer to home, and we'll have benefits on the cost, we'll have benefits on our technology deployment. Having more and more technology here, I think, is a good thing. So there's a balance, and finding that balance in the current political climate is really, really challenging.
Yeah.
Because everything is so pinned hard left or hard right, and the real answer is probably somewhere in the middle. And we have to find that, and that's what I'm looking for.
Are you a golfer?
I'm not a golfer.
Imagine you are a golfer.
Yeah.
Imagine you are the best golfer there is. If you were going to challenge someone to a round of golfers at a game of golf, who would you challenge?
So I would challenge Dave Packard. He's not living anymore, but Dave Packard of Hewlett & Packard is kind of my model of executive management. He's one of the guys that really kicked off the Silicon Valley revolution, had a close working relationship with his local university, with Stanford, and really built his company through close cooperation with the university and with the local bank, Silicon Valley Bank, which is one of the greatest venture capital banks in the world really came up with Hewlett-Packard.
Okay.
And so I would love to talk to him.
Great. Thank you so much for being here with us today,
Thank you,
Bobby. It
Rebecca.
was a pleasure to see you, and I hope that this was a good experience for you.
Thank you. It's good to be
All
here.
right.